When I first saw her name, I read it as Clairo because it was like Cairo with an L. I'm pretty sure it's Clairo, and I'm going to be reviewing her new album, Charm. And when I'm thinking about how to review it, I was like, what's going to be my framing device? I try to have some kind of larger thesis on all of my analyses. And so I first started off with etymology. It's one of my favorite things, the source of words. And it turns out that charm itself comes from the word carmen, which means to sing a verse, kind of an enchantment, kind of a sung enchantment, which makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense for this project and this artist. In general, she has this ability to sort of lull you in, to enchant you. Even on the front cover with her sitting on the couch and looking at you, it's not like raw sexuality, but it is raw charmingness. You know what I mean? And so I'm thinking about that, and I abandoned that. So that's not going to be the way that I approach this album. But what I realized, what I like so much about her music is, and I like this about a lot of music, is it really feeds my heart and my head. It's late summer, by the way. It's midsummer. It's really hot in my house. I think my AC is not keeping up. So if I get sort of increasingly slimy throughout this video, you'll just have to forgive me. So I like how it serves the head and it serves the heart. And so I'm going to explain two essential listens to this album and the way that they help me to understand it and why it's so good. The first one, that's the Cerebral take, will recount the story of listening to the album for the first time at the gym. The second listen, that's the heart, that's the more emotional, that's on my couch during a thunderstorm. So let's start off with the gym, okay? I say this every once in a while, but the way that I listen to an album for the first time is basically an ADHD special. So I am on an elliptical, I'm working and I'm sweating. Not as bad as I'm sweating now, but pretty close. And I'm listening to the music. At the same time that I listen to the music, I watch whatever free movies they have on Pluto TV on mute with subtitles. So it's this kind of synesthesia that I get. And if possible, I try to watch something that matches the theme of what I'm listening to. But in this case, I just gave up. I'm just like, you know what? Marathon Man is there. Pluto's owned by Paramount, and so a lot of great movies of the 70s. I watched 3 Days of the Condor. There's all these great 70s movies on there. So I'm like, okay, perfect. And as I'm watching and I'm listening to this album, I'm realizing this actually goes together really super well. Because when you watch a movie like Marathon Man in the modern context, you have a lot of different feelings. You feel a couple of things. You feel like, oh, look at old New York, back before Giuliani and back before everything was too expensive and you could live in Manhattan and not be a billionaire, And you see just the way the movie's made, and you realize, 1976, this was like one of the top 20 movies of the year, and back then they used to make gritty dramas like this. They used to make darker movies that felt more real. It had actors like Roy Scheider and Dustin Hoffman. Even the director, John Schlesinger, is like the #1 70s stuck director. It had an incomprehensible plot. I only watched the first 40 minutes of it while I listened to the album, and at the end of that, I had no idea what was going on in the movie. None at all. I don't understand what was happening. It was just like Dustin Hoffman running around in a dirty sweatsuit. But there's no special effects. There's no computer-generated imagery. There's no IP. There's no heritage. There's no reboot. There's no requel. It's like this story of like a heroic grad student. The 70s were so awesome, man. You could have a movie about a heroic grad student. And when you watch this movie, you just say they don't make movies like this. The same year, we're talking Taxi Driver came out. All the President's Men. Even the biggest hit of the year, Rocky, is still pretty grimy and cool. And just now with all of our actions and our Avengers and our Batmanses and our Star Warses and our Transformerses, we just no longer get to have that kind of gritty character-based movie. But shut up. That's not true at all. Seriously, we have it way better. First of all, those movies do exist. They might not be super popular, but there's still some gritty, real dramas that come out. You just might have to watch them at home. And while you're watching them at home, you might notice that television has reached a level of artistry that in many cases surpasses the art of cinema. If you want character, if you want development, if you want realism, if you want all those things, you have all of that at your disposal. Plus, hey, some more other stuff. You can also watch Iron Man if you want. And this kind of view of the old days also really downplays some of the other elements of that movie, like people who are not white, like black and brown people in Marathon Man are invariably just like roving hordes of either criminals or menacing, cruel people in the neighborhood, right? Just the kind of stuff that just couldn't go now. And I'm not sure if there were any speaking roles for women at all in the entire movie. Now, the reason that I bring this up is that this goes perfectly with this music, because sometimes some people have the same longing for music the way that it used to be. So what would be the equivalent of Marathon Man in music? Well, it would be your singer-songwriter, like real singing, real playing, your Carole King, Jim Croce, James Taylor, maybe if you're a little bit of a hipster, Warren Zevon and Harry Nilsson, or Seeger or Cat Stevens, if you're more into pop stuff, the kind of like singer-songwriter music that if you think about it, they just don't make anymore. You get your Charlie XCX with her A.G. Cooks and you're making all sorts of on Dutch weirdness, and you get your Beyonce with 75 different producers. We're just missing out on this old time, just great music of guitar, piano, singer, production. It's all been replaced with computers and drum machines, all the pitched sounds and pocketed drums. Watch the Beato video about why music is terrible now, okay? That will make the whole point. Except that's also not true. It's just that we get it all. If there's one thing I want to do on this channel, it is appreciate what we have in this moment. I'm now old enough, I'm pushing 50, I'm now old enough to tell you things are better now than they were before, artistically. We get to have grunge and we get to have hyperpop all at the same time. And we get to have this kind of 70s-esque singer-songwriter who's not trying to imitate the 70s, I don't think. This doesn't feel like it's a pale imitation. It feels like just that's the way that she expresses herself on this album. That's the way she's trying to communicate. That's the space that she wants to be in. And while I'm thinking about this idea that we can have great movies, we can have great music made by real musicians, I realized, what was the thing? What have we actually lost? What has the digital revolution actually, in my opinion, done the worst to? It's the studio musician. There used to be a class of musician who could, at a moment's notice, be paid $50 and a six-pack of beer and put down amazing music for you. Sometimes they might even help produce. Sometimes they might even help write songs. They wouldn't be on there, Who's playing drums for Cat Stevens? Nobody knows. Who's playing bass for, I don't know, the Beach Boys, right? Oh, it's Brian Wilson. No, it wasn't Brian Wilson. It was actually someone else. It was Carol Kay. Who are these people who are making all this music? That's the thing that maybe we're missing. Maybe computer technology has given the artists the ability, the democratic ability, which is great. So if Clairo was broke and could not afford musicians, she could still express herself. That was not true in the 70s. In the 70s, she couldn't have done that, not with the same level of richness. But, we're missing people like Russ Kunkel. Now, if you know who Russ Kunkel is, pat yourself on the back. He was a studio drummer. He played for James Taylor, Joe Walsh, Paul Williams, Warren Zevon, Jackson Browne, Carole King, Joni Mitchell, Carly Simon. All those people that I've been talking about. The drummer that you hear is that. What makes this new Clairo album so great is not just that it has this singer-songwriting atmosphere and it's very well written and very well sung with an interesting theme that goes throughout and her just absolutely charming and enrapturing voice and songwriting. It's also the amount of respect given to these musicians. In particular, two. Leon Michaels, who's the main producer. You might know him. He produced a lot of stuff for Lana Del Rey. He did a lot of rodeo for Travis Scott. Adele, Lizzo, he's the producer on this. And I have to say, thank God it's not Jack Antonoff. I love Jack Antonoff, but I have Antonoff fatigue. It's talk to your doctor. Do you have Antonov fatigue? Is it where you get tired of the same producer producing even though he's a great producer? You just kind of need him to take a break. Even though you're not the biggest Nora Jones fan, maybe we let Leon Michaels in here to produce this. And he's doing a lot of the work. But I don't think that's actually, based on my listening, the soul of this album comes obviously from the songwriting. And that's a super important element in the singing. And then you have the production and the multi-instrumentalist. But I swear to God, while I was sitting there watching this movie, watching Dustin Hoffman act moody in a Columbia grad seminar, I typed up on my notes, wow, this really reminds me of Holy Hive. Sorry, that was weird. That's what that LP is back there. That's the Holy Hive LP from a couple years ago. Float back to you. I did a review. None of you watched it, you posers. Just jump on here because of Kendrick and Drake. It was a good video. Actually, I loved it. I love that album. I bought it on vinyl. I love it. My wife loves it. And it's this drummer, Homer Steinweiss, who just there's a way that a drummer can drum. And it's sort of against what a studio musician, because a studio musician is supposed to be semi-invisible. I like that these guys are not invisible here. His drumming, he's the songwriter and the producer of this album, and he's drumming. And he's such a good drummer with such great taste. You probably recognize him from basically all of the songs you've ever heard of by Amy Winehouse. That's him. He's such a good and tasteful drummer. And listen, we use the term neo-soul. Neo-soul is an annoying term, but it is true. We're maybe losing something with the techno revolution and the hip-hop revolution. We're maybe losing something with really great drummers doing really great, tasteful drumming. But it's these things all together. That's what creates this feeling. And that's where I was. That's my sort of mental brain feeling about this album. What makes a successful integration or interpretation of the 70s? It's funny because I really like the Daddy's Home by St. Vincent, but in a way that was trying so hard to be 70s that it's only through the strength of her songwriting and her singing that pulled that through. It was really on the line of being too much, I think, even though I own that album as well. It's down in the basement. I mean, I took the poster out in the middle and I put that up in the basement. But this never comes close to that line. It never comes close to being cheesy or too much. So that's my brain thinking. What about my heart? This album is absolutely in my heart. Yesterday, there was a thunderstorm. Huge thunderstorm. And as you know, you should know by now, I have a dog named Toby. He's afraid of the thunder. I am his thunder buddy. I was also watching my baby. Okay, she skipped her nap. So a lot of cause of stress that could happen here. We have a barking dog. My son is picking raspberries all morning. My wife's super pregnant, and I had all these meetings at work that I had to, and talk to the president of the college, all that stuff. All this source of potential stress. But instead, I just had this album on, had it on my little Bluetooth speaker, and I turned it up. And I sat on the couch and I had Toby just nuzzled into me. Nuzzled up to me. Not nuzzled? It's not a word. I had him nuzzled up next to me. And then my baby is playing with blocks. She put 3 blocks on top of each other and then put a little plastic monkey on top. She made a monkey tower, and the rain's coming down, and the music is just so good. It's just, the singing is so good. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not thinking about Homer Steinweiss. I'm not thinking about Marathon Man in the 60s and the 70s in the genre. I'm not even thinking about the lyrics. I am not doing any breaking down of this album whatsoever. I am just purely feeling this album. And it is glorious. I am just having the greatest time. I listen to so much music on this channel and in my life. I listen to so much music. Moments like this are actually rare. So that's my heart feeling. If you can imagine having a skittish little mutt nuzzled up next to you and a little baby building a monkey tower and having the rain coming down and just having these killer drums and beautiful production and wonderful guitar playing and singing and songwriting and this voice that just charms you in. I like this album. That's my review out of 10. I'll do a little bit of my traditional stuff. I'm recording on the floor, which means my legs always fall asleep. So I might have to like move around, and I might have to CJ the accent a little bit. I'll like kind of, but we'll see how long I can go here. The album starts off with Nomad, which I think is doing the exact trick that Lou Reed did for Walk on the Wild Side, which is using a electric bass and a stand-up bass at the same time, creating a sort of weird sound. Very gauzy voice, you know. So, like, I guess Elliott Smith is the person who most singers are compared to these days, if they're sort of breathy and kind of like have that feeling as though they live inside of your ear pod. I guess I see that, but really it's just she has a very particular quality to her voice of somehow not being too whispery while completely whispery. I love the way the piano builds up in the chorus. It's all kind of poppy, but it's sort of poppy in that 70s way where there's not like necessarily a hook. And then the bridge comes in, and this was that moment, you know, when I listened to the album the first time, I didn't look up who the producers were. I didn't know. Like, is this Antonov? I don't think it's Antonov. I thought it had to be the guy from Holy Hive because I listened to these drums, and the drums are just so funky and junky and also totally tight. I had run the risk of losing everything, sell all my things, become nomadic. The whole theme of this album is this loss, this feeling of being in a relationship and it not working and regretting it, but not regretting it at the same time. Did I just say in a very long way that it's a breakup album? I guess it's a breakup album. It seems like that's reductive, though. Next track is called Sexy to Someone. Very hard drum beat, very cute production here. It has this, like these little stabs at the end of a phrase and great flutes on here. Flutes is a great shortcut to 70s production. There's just great lead line with a distortion and like later almost like a pedal steel sounding guitar. This one has the most kind of pop potential, you know, like I could see this being played in a movie at a crucial scene and then it becoming like a minor hit. And the lyric is great. I just want to be sexy to someone. I think that's great. That should actually be your goal, you know, because if you're trying to be sexy to everybody, then you're just insecure. So, you know, maybe I shouldn't worry about the fact that I feel like I'm turning into a sweaty ghoul sitting on my floor, right? I should be sexy to my wife, right? Like that's the way we should be. We should just be sexy to someone. That's the goal. That's like nirvana. You know, that's attaining some kind of enlightenment if you can just be sexy to the person who you are with for your entire life. It's great. The funny thing was all the lyrics, I barely picked up any of them. Like, and I listened to this album, like, I talked about those 2 listens. I've been listening to this album nonstop with my family since that moment. Like, we just listened to it driving to the doctor's, dropping off my son, going over here, going over there. We're just listening to it all the time. It's just a beautiful, it fills up very nicely. He does that heart thing very well. Second Nature, a little bit more pop again, has kind of a dum-da-dum-dum-dum sound, which my baby really liked. Little keyboards, a little too long. This song is maybe the closest thing to like overproduced, because there's like this weird change where it becomes sort of like a dum-dum-dum-dum-dum, and then like a little, maybe a clarinet solo, very hard to describe. And once you get in my ear, I see Kismet sinking in, it's Second Nature. Like the sap from a cedar rolling down to be near her, it's Second Nature. Do you want to know what lyrics I picked up from this song? The first 10 times I listened to it? None of them. Just because the way that she sings, the way that it sounds, I just sort of roll along. I did go to college with someone named Kismet once. She was nice, I think. I don't know. I wonder what Kismet's up to. You know, like people with weird hippie names, like we sort of relate to each other because like we've had the same struggle. Next song, okay, yep, see, now my legs are asleep. Why does this always happen when I do these videos? So we got Slow Dance. I gotta go full CJ the X here. Got kind of slow dance here. Very cool sound, just these like smoky synths. This was the song where I just wrote Holy Hive drums because I thought it had to be more dum-dum-dum, modulated chorus, really 70s, gauzy post-70s chorus. Just really gorgeous piano with the voice and more descending flutes. And it's just that sad desire of wanting to be with someone who doesn't want to be with you. You know, she's all like, it's not over when the next day comes, but I know you've got people to turn to. Thank You is the next song, kind of jazzy, soft and cool. Her voice is so smooth and comforting. This is just not getting any better. Like my leg is like fully asleep. I think I need to see a doctor. What is the deal? I've only been talking for 20 minutes. I shouldn't be in some kind of medical state here. And I really like this because it's this resignation that she has that she says, you know, I hate to admit it, I put my pride on the line because when I met you, I'd thank you for your time. Like this person is so special and so in demand that eventually she would just say, thank you for your time. Terrapin, another, okay, seriously, you need to, if you like this album, you need to listen to Holy Hive, Float Back to You, okay? Their other album was good too, but like no one watched this review, so I tried to do smaller acts, but you know, there's a certain point where it's not useful. But yeah, and just very cool, funky drums, like the drum kind of doubles up at a certain point and the hi-hat goes double time. He's just such a great drummer. Simple thing I don't like. I don't need much to like, I find, and I guess I don't cry. Lyrics feel sort of like filler in here. It's hard because I only think of the song Terrapin Station by the Grateful Dead when I hear the word Terrapin. Yuna? It's a great 70s synth style song, more of those great tight drums from Steinweiss. And finally we sort of have like another very straightforward kind of pop hit, nice instrumental outro, but you make me want to go dancing, you make me want to try on feminine, you make me want to go buy a new dress, you make me want to slip off a new dress. You know, this is that, you know, where the album sort of goes in between sort of like finding love and losing love, but I like this because, you know, it's exciting. And I add up my love, doubled guitar notes, a little bit different style than the rest. Echo, this is where, I don't know, I guess Homer was out or something, because they have sort of like this Casio sound, where like the synths are like, there's a setting on keyboards where you press one note and it'll play the rest of the chord. I think that's what it is. And I just don't clock her lyrics at all. Like, even if I'm like paying attention, I just don't. I just sort of hear the vibe. Glory of the Snow. Now we have like a Casio drum and the 70s soul piano at the same time. Really sad lyrics. When I drive, I always check over the seat. I could see you right there waiting on me. The album ends with some cool kind of jazzy guitar, some choir sounds from the keyboard. Lots of hiss on this song. You know, that's the thing, right? So, of course, Clairo's a major recording artist. She could hire an engineer who doesn't have hiss on their song. But the hiss doesn't hurt. The hiss is just there. What is the cost of it of being loved when close is not close enough? That really hurts. When close is not close enough. And that's the general theme of the album. It's funny though, because I just looked at the lyrics today. Like after listening to the album, you know, probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 times all the way through. I didn't know what the album was about, and then I read all the lyrics, and I got kind of sad. Like, the only lyrics that really jumped out to me were sort of like, I would buy a new dress to be with you, but then you just look at it, and it's just this really sad breakup album. My Patreons, I forgot my sheet, I'm sorry. Zach wanted a shout out. And also, I had a student who would wear a Clairo shirt almost once a week. And in the case that you're watching, you know, I never mentioned it in class, even though I'm a Clairo fan, because it never seemed like the right time. But I appreciated your presence in class if you're watching. You did a great job on that, the group assignment at the end there. And anyways, I hope you continue on with French. Okay. Just, you know, it's weird because like I'm like kind of a hip professor. Like I don't want to be like the hip professor. So I never wanted to be like, so Clairo, huh? And then kind of go into it. But at the same time, it's always like I could have talked about Clairo with that student. All right. Well then, until next time, you can tell me what you think about the album, and I'm gonna go figure out what's going on with my leg, because I don't know. I just have to figure out how to get downstairs. I'll just roll downstairs. There's a camera.